4, 3, 2, 1. I told you before to be careful where you put your legs.
I was only trying to be helpful.
I can help myself. What are you waiting for? Come on. Come on. What are you waiting for? Come on. Come on.
For 7 decades, Michael Caine has been among the world's most renowned and recognisable actors.
It was just what I needed. A 1-inch god with a 2-inch penis.
The star of classics like Zulu, The Man Who Would Be King, and The Cider House Rules.
It's a miracle no one was killed.
But also films that brought his career to the brink of complete implosion.
I made a mistake.
Somehow, he has always found a way back.
You're a big man, but you're in bad shape. With me, it's a full-time job.
In this epic podcast series, we will watch and review every Michael Caine movie, from the greatest hits...
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off!
...to the incredible misses.
You failed to maintain your weapon, son.
And take a deep dive into the life and work of one of the world's most recognisable film stars.
His name is Michael Caine, and no one will forget his name.
Behave yourself.
To understand how he has made the mark of Caine.
Well, you all settled in? Right, we can begin. For God's sake, come in!
Hello and welcome to The Mark of Caine, the podcast where we trudge through the dense, steamy jungle of Michael Caine's career in film, watching every movie and hacking away the undergrowth to uncover the best and worst of the great man's life in cinema. My name is Michael Foley, and with me as always along this trail is our expert guide Stephen Black, Chief Information Handler at the Mallow News Twitter stall. I'm trying to set the scene here for what's coming, you know, sort of steamy jungles and lots of trudging.
I got that. Yeah, it was very subtle, but I hope the listeners can pick up on it. Yeah.
We are still in Caine war movie territory, and this is a particularly sticky episode of this podcast. It's filmed in the Philippines. It's long. It's 2 hours. More than 2 hours, as a matter of fact. I've been watching a Michael Caine war movie for 5 hours, if you like. I'm sweating.
Hot, sweaty, and yet did not make me moist in any way.
I'm slightly confused. I actually liked this movie as a kid, but I'm not sure whether I like this movie anymore. It's quite the thing. Too Late to Hero.
Too Late to Hero, a Robert Aldrich film. Now, Robert Aldrich, you may know from such marvelous movies as The Dirty Dozen, which I don't like, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which is fantastically insane and off the wall. Okay. And this is an attempt, I guess, from his own perspective, to go back to the glory of The Dirty Dozen and present us with another group of ill-matched anti-heroes on their way into the jungle to perform a task. The purpose of that task, we're not really sure why they're having to do it. It makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. And yeah, it's long. It's over 2 hours long, and you feel every single second,
every single bead of sweat. And it's kind of it's one of these missions that gives a whole new sort of emphasis to the term suicide mission. This really does feel like something that doesn't need to happen. And maybe we could say that about the movie as well. But look, we can get into this. I come from a certain particular place with this. As kids, we actually recorded this movie, or at least the last hour of it. It must have been on BBC late one night or something. We recorded the last hour, and myself and my brother as kids watched this over and over and over again. So I still have a little bit of sort of, I've got a soft spot for it. But
can I ask, is your soft spot because you empathize with Denham Elliott's character, the kind of the posh officer, given your posh upbringing, being able to fucking afford the likes of BBC One when the rest of us povs in town were basically standing on the roof in thunderstorms trying to get RT1 or RT2? Well,
whatever kind of Angela's Ashes type lifestyle that she might have had in town is not my business, quite frankly. And I mean, yes, we certainly did notice a difference in tone and bearing, if you like, when we went into Mallow from the countryside. But I'd like to point out that our BBC and our ITV back that time was essentially got using a kind of a clothes hanger that was hung off the top of the chimney, pointed towards another clothes hanger that was pointed towards another clothes hanger somewhere over around the east coast of Ireland. So we were picking up HTV and S4C. I had a little bit of Welsh. I had quite a bit of Welsh when I was around 12 or 13, Nosta. Good night, that means, by the way.
It's fantastic. We talked about Angela's Ashes. It was a privilege to go through your own reminiscences there.
I think there's a memoir in this. I really do.
I think there is definitely. There's, like I said, there's a bad book in everyone, and there's multiple bad books in some people. So
there's lots of bad books in me. Anyway, speaking of bad things or things that we're not sure would actually work in practice, let's get into this. It's hot and sweaty in the jungle. It's riddled with bugs and crabs and Japanese soldiers, all capped off by a suicide mission for Caine and the boys that really kind of doesn't feel like it needs to happen at all. But this is where 70s Caine begins. It's 1970 and it's too late, the hero.
War. It's a dying business. ABC Pictures presents an Associates and Aldrich production, Too Late, the Hero. From Robert Aldrich, the man who brought you The Dirty Dozen. Too Late, the Hero. Starring Michael Caine.
Getting ourselves killed isn't going to make any difference to anybody except us.
Right. So listen, what is this now? Is this an anti-war movie? Is it a war movie? Is it a class struggle thing? Or is it Charlie Croker from The Italian Job in the Jungle? Or is it just a kind of, hey, Aldrich, make us another Dirty Dozen that goes completely arseways, not right, wrong?
Yeah, it's kind of a buffet, isn't it? It's a kind of how much of each of these things could I pile onto my plate, and at the end still have something resembling a meal.
Yeah, like it's 1970, so like, you know, from an American perspective and from a global perspective, you know, Vietnam War is huge and there's a huge anti-war feeling, and we know that Caine has a thing about war movies, about making ones that make a point, although we could say the Battle of Britain doesn't make a whole pile of a point, but certainly with Play Dirty, it's a kind of an anti-hero movie. No one really wants to be out in combat, and it's kind of the same here. There's a bit of class struggle. Caine plays a character with a really he's a Cockney, so he's kind of, you know, he's bringing that kind of working class actor aspect to it again, but it's also like it's a war movie. Like, I mean, there are bits of sort of anti-war stuff, but fundamentally it's about going, fighting Japanese, shooting guys and getting back home safely. Like that's it, like, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. There are references to, I mean, Caine's character, much like Caine, doesn't want to be there. Cliff Robertson's character doesn't want to be there either. Nobody except the officers really think that it's important for them to do what it is that they're doing. Everyone outside of Caine, Robertson and Denham Elliott Circle is kind of feckless or shifty or, you know, untrustworthy. The Japanese, I mean, the Japanese barely get a look, and there's one, the major, who's running the mobile disco in the jungle, is probably the only, you know, it doesn't even get a backstory. There's no kind of, you know, idea of where he's coming from. It's literally just a whole bunch of lines as he's kind of issuing thinly veiled threats and sometimes just open threats to the lads as they're trying to escape towards the end of the film. Yeah, like, so, I mean, this is, I mean, and even at that, like, you know, do we need a backstory for these guys? Probably not. You mentioned the mobile disco there. I think this is a good point to get into this. Get into the plot, because I'm sure people are going, mobile disco in the middle of a World War II movie in the jungle. That sounds like a movie that I might actually want to watch. So let us disabuse you of that notion straight away. Now, the plot for Too Late, the Hero. Okay, it's 1942. The islands of the New Hebrides. It's in the Pacific. Sam Lawson is played by Cliff Robertson. He's sent off to join a British commando unit as an interpreter for a combat mission. He's not too pleased because he's dodged any combat so far, so this is completely not up his street. When he gets there, the British base is like basically at the edge of a big, massive open field, no man's land basically between them and the jungle that's controlled by the Japanese. And any British that try and get back through that open field generally get cut down by Japanese fire from the jungle. So the mission is to destroy a radio transmitter before an American naval convoy appears on the horizon. So, you know, the Japanese could send a message to their people saying, oh, there's a naval convoy nearby. So instead, they're meant to go send a fake all is well message, destroy the radio transmitter and get back again.
it's actually that dull and that kind of pointless. So Denham Elliott, as you mentioned there, Stephen, leads this group as he's an incompetent upper class officer who kills wounded Japanese and has only slightly more regard for his own men, and the rest are a mess of soldiers washed up after the evacuation of Singapore, including Mick Caine as Tosh Hearn, the group medic, and the group cynical Cockney. So off they go, encountering Japanese, and they're losing members of the squad like flies as they go. Lots of marching, lots of jungle, lots of sweating. Eventually they reach the Japanese base. The radio they bring to broadcast this fake message is broken along the way. Cliff Robertson's character flat refuses for reasons that are outside of some kind of conscientious objector thing. I don't understand. He flat refuses to use the Japanese radio to broadcast the fake message. So that's weird. There's a firefight. Denham Elliott gets killed while knocking out the Japanese radio and falls dead in front of Cliff Robertson, staring at him, who's still hiding under a hut, giving Cliff Robertson a dose of the gilts. So the lads have to make their way home. They stumble on a secret airfield, would you believe? And then the Japanese use, as Stephen says, loudspeakers, mobile disco, to exhort them to give up. And this Major Yamaguchi, DJ Tokyo, if you like, broadcasts every few hours, telling them to come in, we'll treat you kindly, so on and so forth. Some of the lads give themselves up, but Caine and Robinson, for the purposes of making a movie that lasts longer than 2 hours, they don't. So there's more trudging and chasing, more broadcasts from DJ Tokyo. They eventually reach the edge of the jungle in the open field. And at this point, Caine morphs into Charlie Croker from The Italian Job with a plan. So they decide to double back, kill the Major, to create some chaos, to give themselves a chance of getting across the field. They find him no bother, despite the fact that they're kind of trudging through this completely dense jungle. But they find him no bother. They shoot the Major in the back and then set off running for home, zigzagging away across the open plain. One makes it, the other doesn't. Now, if you don't want to know, if you're still interested in watching this movie and you haven't seen it already, you don't want to know who makes it, because one of them does. And
it's Michael Caine. Michael Caine makes it.
For God's sake. All right. And then at the end of it, he gets there and he's waiting. I can't believe I made it. And he gives a speech that I can still recite. Well, when I say speech, it's about a dozen words. He has this. He's asked, who's that with you out there? I says, he's bloody hero. He killed 15 bleeding Japs, single-handed. 30, if you like. And that's it. It's an anti-war, anti-hero adventure flick. Parallels with Play Dirty Dozen, but Stephen, I already know what you're going to like. It's not really your thing, really, is it? I still have a soft spot for it, but this is not at all your bag whatsoever. Like,
much like Caine's experience was making this film, I didn't want to be there, and it was possibly the most painful shoot, or most arduous location, anyway, I've had so far.
Really? Hang on. The most arduous location. Like, we've gone through a lot. So I'm going to see that and raise you southern Georgia in deep summer, hurry sundown, Jane Fonda and all the rest of that. Would you say this was worse for you than that?
Yes, simply because Hurry Sundown was batshit crazy. It was a film that shouldn't exist, yet it was made with scenes that defied belief. So there was enough in there to keep you going, even though everybody knew it was horrifically racist. The plot made no sense.
Yeah.
And it was an overall aseptic experience. This was a war movie. It is not hard to make a war movie interesting. You just put a lot of action into it so that people are, at least every 5 minutes or so, you get distracted from the plot that makes no sense or the very ham-fisted attempts at anti-war sentiment by somebody getting blown up or killed it. That's all you ask. This is just fucking boring. It is just boring. It is boring. Every minute I felt I was there in the jungle with them trudging along. I think I may have actually contracted fucking malaria watching the shagging thing. It's God. I don't care who this person is. Somebody just blew up. Which one of them was it that blew up? It doesn't really matter. Let's go to the next thing that doesn't make sense. Okay. I'm not an army man. You know that. Even though I come from a proud military background.
You do, really?
Yeah. I have family members who once watched all of the Winds of War series, which was practically makes them veterans as far as my understanding.
They've got to march every Remembrance Day.
They do. They up and down their garden like little Captain Tom Moores, just giving their all for the war effort.
The whole of the Winds of War. That's incredible. Wow. I mean, do you know what? I presume they've been in a documentary recounting their experiences and how it affected them later. Well,
to be honest with you, we've more of a stoic background now, and I think the British listeners we've been more like silently repressing that and keeping it. We don't like to talk about that.
That explains an awful lot. An awful lot.
What happened over there in the front room with the box set? We don't like to talk about that. So let's start off at the start. No, things that fucking annoyed me with this. Right,
all right. I'm just going to sit back. I'm going to sit back for a while here.
We'll start off with Henry Fonda making a cameo in this.
He's fine in this. Stop. He's fine.
He's fine. No, and he's fine. But it's like, what the fuck is he doing with? Like, he clearly owed Robert Aldrich money from a poker game or something, or maybe I don't know. It's bizarre, but he's there.
He's in it for a couple of minutes. He sends Cliff Robertson's character off to the New Hebrides
for reasons unknown. He's a bit of a layabout. We get that impression, and he's seen no action, I guess, even though they don't really say that one word or the other. But like he says, you speak Japanese, but you also fit the physical description for this. Like, I'm kind of go, how do you fit the physical description? He's a man clearly in his fucking 60s, and he's the shape of a fucking tanned jam donut, like, you know.
He's not that bad. Like, I think the big confusion.
You want to send this elderly man to his death? I mean, how cruel could fucking Henry Fonda be? Like, this poor old man, this sagging walnut, shoved into khakis, send him off to his fucking death in the New Hebrides, like.
Sagging walnut is very harsh. Look, the big confusion with him is, like, again, you're watching it and you're thinking it's 1970. So he's kind of like a slacker GI with a haircut. He's kind of like, is he a hippie soldier or is he not? Like,
actually, I was saying to you on the WhatsApping machine that like, this is out the same year as MASH. And like, MASH is a movie of its time. This is this fucking movie could have been made at any year. It's anachronistic. It doesn't belong in 1970. You know.
Yeah.
Something like MASH, which clearly wears it's set during World War II, but the Vietnam references there are clear parallels. This is it just doesn't know what the fuck it wants to do with his character. I mean, Denham Elliott calls him in this movie set in 1942, accuses him of being a long-haired conscientious objector. Yeah. It's like, God, you might as well just say, you're one of those Beatles fans, aren't you? Dave, I see you playing your air guitar, you Jimi Hendrix, you.
That's the moment. That is the moment where the movie pretty much self-detonates beyond, you're just waiting to see, well, who's going to get back. That's at that point, the movie is over. When the long-haired, conscientious objector line makes its presence felt about 30 years out of place. It's unbelievable. Do you know what? It's incredible that got through the edit. Like, how did that make the movie?
I don't know. Is it right? Did they feel that they were being? I mean, and they weren't being clear enough because it's all over the place in tone. So you're really not sure until, I guess, Caine says it in the last few fucking minutes, the last minute of the movie, that there is a clear anti-war sentiment here. Other than that, it just seems to be a bit more class struggle between the ordinary grunts and the Denham Elliott's character, but even that's kind of lost in the mire of it. And then it wants to have a little bit of action in there as well. And then even kind of the last hurrah at the end where they decide to go out to find DJ Tokyo and take him out.
Yeah. Go on anyway. What else annoyed you? Sorry, I dragged you down the slide there.
The mission is pure bobbins. Like, you don't know why would completely pointless. And I guess there's war in a nutshell. They were trying to make that point with Play Dirty. Ultimately, this nihilistic view that the mission meant nothing and ultimately it came to nothing and your lives are worth nothing. But this just doesn't even have the benefit of having a tangible reason for going from point A to point B.
No.
If that, and the lads are clearly, first soldiers are clearly so shit at killing people. Like, everybody they shoot and go down, they're back 2 seconds later to kill one of their own lads. I don't know how many times they shot a Japanese soldier in this, and they turned the back and the Japanese soldiers back up, and killed one of their own men. The only person they managed to effectively kill is when flat-nosed McScottface managed to strangle a crazy Ian Bannon. He does it so efficiently. He strangles a man with his machete sheath, and that's not a euphemism because that would have been an interesting scene. Strangles a man with his machete sheath within seconds. and yet they can't shoot a man dead.
It's a fair point. No, there's a lot of knife action, a lot of stabbing, a lot of silent stuff going on from them. By the way, just for anybody trying to grimly hang on to what we're talking about, Flat-Nosed Max Scottface is basically the traitor in the group. He wants to go to the Japanese as quickly as possible, and so he kills Ian Bannon, who's one of the injured members, while the other lads are asleep, so they can make a quiet getaway. But what about, like, there was a couple of lines in it that caught my ear from McCain, actually. There's a line, like, again, the script is just shocking. Like, some of the bits where there's banter are just, I don't know what they're laughing at all. But there's one, he describes Denham Elliott to the boys as having as much class as a syphilitic road sweeper. That's caught my ear. It's
a terrible line.
How do you come? Where does that line even start on the page? And then there's another guy, one of the lads, as you mentioned there, gets blown up by a mine, and someone asks Caine, like, where is he? Because Caine is the medical guy in this stuff. You know, any of this stuff he gets. One, like, where is he? You might say he's got us surrounded. I was like, oh my God Almighty.
You might say bits of him are all over the place. You might say he was exploded by a mine which shredded his flesh, and now all those pieces of flesh are around us in a kind of meaty tableau. And
can I just add, by the way, just for our own sake, all these bits that we're mentioning weren't in the bits that myself and my brother watched as kids. It was the last hour getting back is what we saw. So this was all new to me this week watching this. Yeah, it's just god awful.
You have until sundown to surrender.
Anything else bug you?
So Denham Elliott gets killed by a Japanese soldier that he fails to kill efficiently. He cold cocks him twice in the back of the head, doesn't even take his gun off him, and then turns his back on him for, like, your man just wakes up, has a few stretches, gets on the Google, finds out from WebMD whether or not he has the symptoms of a concussion. Emails HR and says, look, I'm going to be off work for a few hours. Then turns around, Denham Elliott is still there waving through the window, getting the guys to come on. And then, fucking goes about shooting. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, there are, I will grant you, there are flaws and there are holes in this plot. Anything else bother you?
The mobile disco.
Movie.
Like, what's the point of this mobile disco? That basically the Japanese, for anyone who hasn't watched this, the Japanese essentially spend the last half hour of the movie chasing the Michael Caine and the rest of the lads through the jungle in order to stop them from alerting the British authorities the fact that there's a secret airbase on the island. And what they do in order to do this is that they have a team of lads with radio, with loudspeakers, with a PA system essentially, running through the jungle. They put up this mobile disco and they broadcast threats going, we look after you lads, give yourselves up before we murder you. And this goes on for about half an hour. And you're going, it's an insane concept, but also if we get these lads involved in looking after rural broadband, we'd be in a hack. The efficiency with which they just fucking, every 20 or 30 meters up the trees, out the speakers, you tap on the microphone, hello, this is Radio Kyoto, like it's fucking nuts. And then while your man's on the wheels of steel, then he gets shot in the back.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that got me about that whole thing, right? Like, they've been dense. I cannot say dense enough about this jungle. And yet they managed to find him. And I know this is movie time, but even in real time movie time, you're talking about 10 minutes. They found him and they shoot him in the back and they get to run away. And it's like, what the hell? Like, it's just mad. Also, by the way, there was 2 surviving prisoners that we don't hear anything about afterwards. We presume they were killed, but we don't actually see the 2 surviving British prisoners. Don't even see them killed or anything.
Who were kept alive for no reason.
Absolutely no reason.
I'm not promoting brutal efficiency here, but if you threaten to kill the 2 prisoners, if the lads don't turn themselves in, then you should go ahead instead of faking faking the fact that you shot him by broadcasting the shots over the PA system.
And by the way, those fake executions, by the way, they are shot, but they are shot like with, he points the gun right beside their ear, bang, and the lads don't barely flinch. You're like, are you not completely deafened now?
Yeah, that's at least tinnitus for the next few years.
At the very, very least. Anything else, or will we just pivot back to Caine's performance?
Yes.
Oh God, there's more.
There's more. Just the fucking zigzagging at the end that goes on.
Oh, I love the zigzagging.
10 minutes. Zigzagging. It's like the fuck, and the British at the side. It's like the Epsom Derby. Like it's fucking. It's such a bizarre way. Like, it's shot badly. The lads are kind of zigzagging back and forth. Japanese are shooting, but the Japanese aren't in range of the British on the other side of no man's land aren't in range of the Japanese, but the Japanese are in range of the British. The other makes no sense. Mm-hmm. It's just it's a morass. It's a mess. You don't know what's going on. And then this whole bit at the end, he was a hero. I'd be like, Jesus Christ! It's just
stop ruining. Stop now! You're ruining my childhood.
No, the scriptwriter just high-fived himself after that and just took a lunch break. Like, oh yeah, that really gets to the heart of the war. Oh, pain. Oh, man's inhumanity to man. Oh, will there ever be a rainbow? Oh, brutality. Yeah, I really nailed it here. There's going to be people burning their draft cards in the streets of America after this movie gets out, and of course. There weren't, because it was a flop. It was a flop. Do you know why it was a flop? Because it was shit. Because it was a shit pile of poo-poo. Yeah, it was just...
And with that, I'm just going to defend the zigzagging a little bit, because it is kind of cool. Cliff Robertson turns to Kenny, goes, you zig, I'll zag. And they zigzag across the thing. But you're absolutely right, because they'd have these overhead shots of them and then straight shots of them kind of running up the field. Yeah. And at points you're kind of going, they're getting really close. And then the overhead shot, they're miles away. They're close. I think they're running backwards as a matter of fact. It's back and forth, a little bit like the movies. I have
a question for you, right? You and I are standing by the edge of no man's land, right? And
yes.
We're running away from Japanese soldiers. We got to make it the other. I say to you, you zig, and I zag. If I say you zig, are you going left or are you going right?
I guarantee you, we fall over each other 3 paces out, we get shot in the face each.
You're not running in the same fucking direction. Is it not more practical? You go left, I go right in a zigzag fashion. Of course it makes sense, but it's not exactly a slick line that rolls off the tongue, Anyway, let's bring it home. Caine performance. Very solid Caine. Very
it
good.
Is.
Yeah, he's involved. He's sweaty. He hates being there. And he's as I said, he says this is the worst location to shoot of all time.
Why is it? I'm going to stop. Let me stop you there now, because you said this to me, and I'm not really aware of this. Why? What was the problem? This is shot in the Philippines, right? What was the problem?
The conditions of the shoot, where they were out in location, it was uncomfortable. Insects, sweat, humidity, poverty, the catering. The only highlight of the day is when genuinely the only highlight of the day was being able to go back to the officers' mess where they could enjoy a cool drink and food that didn't come from a can. Okay. Aldrich used to shoot in bursts of like 14 to 15 days, so that on the trot, so that lads could go in 4 days R&R, which meant they could get out of the country. So they went to I think they went to Taiwan and they went to Hong Kong. Various activities with involving misunderstandings between Mick Caine and the daughter of a Chinese dignitary. No names are mentioned. No,
reverse. What?
So he's at a party, I think, in Hong Kong, and he's I think it's the host's daughter. Comes up to him apropos of nothing and says, I've always been a big fan of yours. I love your movies. And so he ends up taking her back to his gaff. Next morning, she's gone, but the Chinese authorities raid his flat looking for his papers, and the guy in charge says to him, "You're Michael Caine. I'm known as the Chinese Alfie."
Right. Okay.
Mick Caine goes, "Oh, that's great. Your man was disappointed to note that there were no ladies present on site, even though Mick Caine, wanted to say, well, actually, you just missed her."
Wow.
Then the other story I know is that he was at another party in the Philippines, and the host, who the wife of the host, who was a dignitary with many armed bodyguards, accosted him in the jacks, one of the bathroom stalls, placed one hand around his neck and the other down, as he says in his own word, his trousers, to a very sensitive part of his anatomy, which I'm assuming was his penis, unless he's a very sensitive anus. But I've yet to get to that part of the book. So. Discretion being the better part of valor, he did a runner. And my final anecdote, because it's my turn on the anecdote Wheel of Fortune this week.
Is great stuff. This is great.
I know. He was. They were while they were on location. Cliff Robertson won an Oscar for his role in Charlie, which is an adaptation of, I think it was Flowers for Algernon.
Okay.
Which is a very popular book at the time. But Aldrich wouldn't let him off set to go to the States to accept the Oscar. So what he had done, because he knew he'd be meeting the press when he got off the plane, was he had a local carpenter make a wooden Oscar for him, so he had something to be carrying down the flight of the steps for that. So he was walking. So they got off the flight. Robertson was in front of Caine, and as he was going down the steps, he saw Gregory Peck, who was the president of the Academy at the time, was there ready, waiting for him with his Oscar.
Oscar.
Yeah, so Cliff Robertson just took his wooden Oscar and fucked it behind him and flaked Caine right in the forehead, causing a considerable gash.
Oh man!
So that's my turn on the anecdote.
That was outstanding. I've only one now. Just when you were talking there, one jumped into my head. I think he was at another party. I'm going to say in the Philippines as well. Where he was getting dirty looks from the hostess, and he couldn't understand why he was getting such awful looks. And it eventually turned out that she thought that everybody was calling him Mr. Caine. She didn't know who he was, and she thought everyone was saying Mr. Cocaine. She thought he was selling drugs, and he had to there was a whole sort of a confusion around that. But his life at this point, like he goes to the Philippines. He had been in a relationship with the soon-to-be Mrs. Bianca Jagger, which was sort of, Bianca Jagger wouldn't have spoken overly kindly of their time together, whereas McCain was very complimentary. He said she was, the most intelligent girl in town. I think he said he met her in, I think he met her in Paris, and they moved to London and so on. But anyway, it was on this shoot that he met Minda Feliciano, who became his next girlfriend. So at least, he might never have wanted to go back to the Philippines again, but, at least he came home with a girlfriend.
I'm loving our transition into a Daily Mail podcast. This is great.
I think it's interesting, though. It's interesting what's going on with him around these things, He does give, like, you're right, he does give good performances, some good Caine shouting and pointing early on. There's a kind of a cockroach race or something where Ian Bannon's character comes in, brings his boot down on the runners and riders, and Caine is crossing, he's pointing, he's doing all that, and we get perfectly pitched Charlie Croker towards the end. Like, again, he's kind of carrying another movie on his back, and bizarrely not really used very much he really doesn't become the main kind of center point of the movie until like the last third of it. Why they don't use him earlier than that?
Given the fact that he's top billing, he's the lead in this. But it's Cliff Robertson who gets more screen time, or his character certainly gets more attention in terms of what passes for character development in it. But yeah, Mark, so the Caine anyway. What you think?
Look, I'm going to be interested to hear what you said, because look, I'm obviously coming at it from a slightly different angle, having watched the thing as a kid and stuff. I would be a high 6 heading for a 7, to be honest.
Yeah, I go for a 6. I go for a 6 in this. I think he's good. I think he's good in it. I think it's driven by his absolute hatred and loathing of the locations. It really fits into a character who does not want to be in this theater of war.
Yeah. Like you're right. Like he does his best with what he's given, and he really does do quite okay. Like 6 is kind of in the realms of other movies we've watched so far. So like kind of $1 Billion Brain as Harry Palmer is kind of 6-ish kind of performance, So I think he's slightly better than that. But 6 is good by me. You mentioned before it's a complete box office fail in America. I presume that's why Henry Fonda and Cliff Robertson was probably given a bit more screen time to try and up that, because the rest of the cast is essentially British war movie actors and British comedic actors and so on, and the likes of an Ian Bannon who would have had a big reputation in the UK at the time. Huge success in the UK, but it completely didn't do a dime in America. Some of the reviews, Gene Siskel who's run a skewer through a few Michael Caine films at this point now, he gave this film 1 star out of 4, kind of basically repeating what you're saying. The essence of an action film is action, and that's precisely what's missing. And that's kind of that's sort of the tone of the whole thing, that it's all bland competence. I think is described as by a guy in Variety, Arthur D. Murphy in Variety, bland competence, which I think is pretty much it. But so that's that one. Will we tag on Simon?
Yeah, we'll do Simon very quickly because it is a very quick cameo. This is hilarious, and I put that in quotation marks, silent short film. There's some sort of resurgence of this as a format in the late 60s, early 70s, of these short silent movies with a rake of British celebrity comedians in it. This one is Simon. It doesn't matter about the plot. Essentially, Mick Caine is in the first minute of it. He has a beard. He is outraged when the main character of this movie papers over the bottom half of Play Dirty's movie poster. That is it. In terms of his efficacy, he looks angry. He's wearing a beard with full competence. I flash back to my own. I empathise because I once had a beard. So I was able to empathise with his character, and I think his turn was convincing. It was 10 out of 10 from the convincing turns.
Angry man wearing beard. Yeah, pretty much. I'm going to give it the old football substitute thing. I don't think he's not on long enough to rate really, but we will see the beard in the next movie. Next movie is going to be The Last Valley, which is Omar Sharif and Caine, and another one for the kids. Back to the 1600s for the 30 Years' War. So it's got Brian Blessed in it.
It's got Omar Sharif in it. That would surely tickle your epic dingle.
Tickles my epic dingle, and must surely tickle your bridge-related dingle. A man reared in a house of bridge.
Yes, many bridges. Many bridges.
Okay, so go look for The Last Valley. Have a look at it. It's out there online. We're moving into the 90s. This was brought out just in January 1971. So we're moving into the 70s now, but trudging sweatily, quite tired and wheezing a little bit.
So as usual, if you want to go away and find The Last Valley, watch it. And if you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter at Michael Caine 2. Ask us any question about the movie that you like, and maybe about our personal lives. Mick would love to hear any personal remarks about his personal appearance, hygiene, private life, anything really. He's an open book.
I am. I actually am.
That's it. We'll see you again next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take it easy.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment. Only nice ones, though. Mean comments will make Alfie cry, and no one wants to see that. The Michael Caine podcast is written, researched, and presented by Stephen Black and Michael Foley, and edited by Andrew Foley. Music is composed by Stephen Black. If you'd like to get in touch, you'll find us on Twitter at Mallow News and at Michael Caine 2. And if you enjoyed this episode, you'll find all the rest wherever you get your podcasts. The Michael Caine is a Mallow News 2 Cubes production. See you next time.